Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. We will be starting in a couple of minutes, just waiting for more folks to trickle in. If you can keep an eye on chat as well, that would be great. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Patrick Obonyo and I'm delighted that you chose to join this convening. I'm here today representing the IKEA Foundation. At the foundation, we work to help families create a better life while protecting the planet. We are committed to tackling some of the root causes of inequality while simultaneously addressing the causes and effects of climate change. We believe that families need both financial stability and a healthy environment if they and their children are to thrive. And for us, improving livelihoods and protecting the planet are inseparable. One of the ways in which we hope to improve people's livelihoods while protecting the planet is by supporting green entrepreneurs that create meaningful jobs with climate-smart solutions. We fund our partners to help nurture and grow scalable green enterprises that help people and communities build livelihoods and support their families. We also want to advance bold collaborations to cultivate dialogue, scale solutions, and influence policy towards creating a better world for the many people. We are committed to amplifying the voices of partners to ensure a fair, inclusive, and balanced debate around these issues. That is why we're delighted today to join you in this ANDE South Asia convening. We see this as an opportunity to unearth different perspectives and foment dialogue in these areas. The IKEA Foundation has been supporting ANDE to understand and catalyze the green entrepreneurship ecosystem. As part of this, we are funding research that will help us and other stakeholders understand the status quo of green enterprises across India and Kenya to gain insights that will help build more effective and impactful programming. We are also pleased to offer support to Andes Climate Action Labs, as we do believe that the complex challenges we face today can only be solved by different stakeholders coming together to bring their creativity and resources to the table. Thank you once again for joining the Ande team today, and we hope this is the beginning of many more regional dialogues towards greater impact. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you to Andy's first South Asia convening. Thank you for making the time to be here. We are very excited to be hosting you over the next 3 days and have put together what we hope will be interesting and insightful sessions for all of you. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to tell you a little bit about why Andy chose to focus on the SGB ecosystem and what we hope to accomplish with this regional convening. The Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs, a program of the Aspen Institute, is a network of almost 300 organizations that support entrepreneurs in emerging markets. This network brings together the full spectrum of ecosystem partners, from investors, accelerators, and incubators to international NGOs, education and research institutions, and development agencies. As the leading global voice of the small and growing business sector, also known as the SGB sector, Andy believes that SGBs are a powerful yet underleveraged tool in addressing social and environmental challenges. At Andy, we work to grow the body of knowledge about key issues impacting SGBs, mobilize resources, and connect the institutions that propel small business entrepreneurs who build inclusive prosperity in developing and emerging markets. Andy embraces an ecosystem approach to our work, seeking to catalyze coordinated efforts to build and strengthen entrepreneurial ecosystems. Small and growing businesses are defined by Andy as commercially viable businesses with 5 to 250 employees that have significant potential and ambition for growth. Typically, SGBs seek growth capital from US dollars 20,000 to 2 million. So why SGBs? SGBs differ from the more traditional characterization of small and medium enterprises, or SMEs, in two fundamental ways. First, SGBs are different from livelihood-sustaining small businesses, which start small and are designed to stay that way. Second, unlike many medium-sized companies, SGBs often lack access to the financial and knowledge resources required for growth. SGBs do more than create jobs. They create goods and services that benefit all sectors of society. They create shared prosperity, promote inclusive and sustainable economies, create a pro-growth business environment, and instill a spirit of entrepreneurship that can transform the economic infrastructure of developing nations. Successfully supporting SGBs requires cultivating entrepreneurial ecosystems throughout developing economies. Andy is dedicated to doing just that by building a thriving network of people and organizations that support them through policy and program initiatives. The South Asia convening is one such initiative as we actively seek to grow our footprint in the region. This convening, centered this year on resilient entrepreneurship, is our first attempt to bring the South Asia SGB ecosystem together to initiate discussion and facilitate cross-border collaboration to further economic growth through entrepreneurship. We could not have done this without the active support of our partners across the region, and we are very grateful to them for this. We see this as the beginning of many more focused conversations and interventions in the region, and look forward to your active participation and feedback over the next 3 days. Without further ado, let me introduce our fabulous speakers who will kick off the convening with a fireside chat, discussing what it takes to build resilience in small and growing businesses across the region and setting the context for other sessions to come. Dr. Rubana Haq is a businesswoman, a poet, and currently the Vice Chancellor of Asian University for Women, an international university in Bangladesh. She is the immediate past president of the Bangladesh Garment Manufacturers and Exporters Association, BGMEA. And she was also the first female occupant of the post in 4 decades. She is the managing director of Mohammadi Group, a family business conglomerate whose journey began exporting ready-made garments and has since diversified into software, digital distribution, real estate, power generation, and the group's latest, the launch of a television channel called Nagorik. Rubana won the SARC Literary Award for her poems in 2006. Her first book of poems is titled Time of My Life. She's the former CEO of TV South Asia, a collaborative platform of South Asian electronic media based in Kolkata. She was featured in the BBC's 100 Women in 2013 and 14. Vikas Bali has close to 25 years of experience spread across management, consulting, and industry roles. At IntelliCap, he is focused on developing innovative business models for the majority markets, scale-up of enterprises, and contributes towards solving the jobless growth environment across the developing world. Most recently, he has been overseeing the digitization of women-centric value chains in rural India by creating a coalition of rural women, members of the processing industry, payment banks, MFIs, etc. Prior to joining IntelliCap, Vikas worked with Accenture Strategy as Managing Director, Head of the Products Industry Group. He has also worked with DEN Networks, Tata Sky, and AT Kearney. Vikas is a management graduate from IIM Calcutta and holds a bachelor's in engineering. With that, over to you, Rubana, to take the conversation ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for the generous introduction. Thank you, and hi, Vikas.
Hello, Rubana.
Oh, I can see you. Yeah, okay. So thank you, Andy, for making space for me and Vikas to address your audience today. But before we start, maybe, Vikas, you could just walk us through to what have you actually done in the last, post-COVID, that you would like to share with us? Because I'd actually like to hear more about you and your work before I go on yapping myself.
All right, thanks much, Rubana, and thanks to Andy and Sucharita for giving us the occasion to come together. It's always very nice to meet people with a different brain than yours. Having been a management consultant, there is nothing left in my right brain and nothing right with my left brain. So always useful to meet up with people and pick nuggets of wisdom from all of you. So I'm really excited on this conversation. Before I speak about the question that Rubana has posed to me, I just take 30 seconds to introduce IntelliCap, who we are, so that the audience has a better context of the questions that we are trying to have a conversation on. IntelliCap's vision is to build enabling ecosystems, channelize capital to build a more sustainable, equitable society. We believe that capital, knowledge, networks, and technology all need to come together in order to address the challenges that the impact entrepreneurs or the MSMEs are facing. And we believe that there is tremendous potential for the global South to learn from each other. Our context is very different from the global North, and therefore we need to develop our own solutions in the context of the global south and try and see how we can pick on these solutions from different markets, from Africa through to India, South Asia, and through to Southeast Asia and Asia as far as Indonesia, Philippines, etc. So we do believe that building these digital bridges is extremely critical. In all the work that we do, an impact enterprise or an MSME is at the heart of it. And through our journey over the past 2 decades, we have searched, seeded, supported, scaled maybe about 5,000 enterprises in different parts of the global south. So that's who we are and what we do. Now, coming to the question, Rubana, that you posed on post-COVID, I think there are 3 or 4 tectonic shifts that are happening because of the pandemic. And it's important to understand these, to understand the responses of different types of SGBs, be it the startups or be it the MSMEs. And these 3 or 4 are, and there are no surprises, any of them. Number one, the globalization model that had been developed over the last 30, 40 years is now up for question. The reliance on a particular country or a set of countries as the production hubs will have to certainly be revisited. With the war now in Ukraine, there is a further need for each country to start assessing whether they need to go back to the theory of self-dependence and to what extent and in what products and services. So that's number one. The global world order, the globalization order is up for question. The second is that technology is playing a very, very interesting disruptor across all our businesses. So in the last few years, and businesses have been very, very badly impacted because of COVID. But guess what? Ag tech, ed tech, fintech, whichever tech, and that continues to attract a tremendous amount of interest from investors and everybody else within the ecosystem. So technology is certainly playing a big disruptor, and mass customizing products and services for the last mile is now a possibility given all these tech plays. So we've heard of data as the new gold or new oil or however you want to call it. But clearly using data for mass customization and delivering the product or service that the last mile consumer needs is a second big trend. The third one is that there is, however limited, a greater focus on sustainability. And industries after industry are paying more attention to this demand to say, is our business being run on sustainable principles? It's not just about how much value we are creating for our shareholders, it's also about the societal value that is getting created and how companies can really add value to society. So that's it's not happening, it's in drops, it's in trickles, but hopefully over the next decade, we'll see a lot more shift towards sustainability as being the central theme. Clearly, the chief sustainability officer role should get much more center stage in a lot of companies in this coming decade. Fourth would be that there is a greater thrust towards formalizing the informal. So the informal sector could potentially see itself getting squeezed by the large becoming larger in some sense. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but clearly this is a trend which is discernible. Most economies are built on the back of small and growing businesses or micro, small, medium entrepreneurs. They constitute anywhere between 30 and 50% of the GDP of those countries. And taking care of those sectors and making sure that they scale up is extremely important. But somewhere there is a feeling of let's formalize the informal, let's make sure that everybody is in that vast one tax net And certainly that's a noble objective, but making sure that the small and growing businesses are not dealt a heavy hand because of all of this is really at the other end of the spectrum. So these are the 4 or 5 broad themes, Rubana, that I see as ecosystem builders grappling with. Certainly, from a startup standpoint, the last couple of years have been extremely disruptive. Number of sectors have got completely hammered out of shape, if I may use that French. And a lot of sectors are also showing recovery. And were recovering post-COVID. So the discretionaries who got very badly impacted, the beauty, salon, preschool, education services, a lot of these sectors got very, very badly hit, but were coming back. And now they're faced with the different sets of challenge, which is inflation that the world has not seen before. So some very interesting challenges are coming to fore in the next few years for all of us as ecosystem builders. But really, let me take a pause here. And Rowana, I've left the audience to think about all these grand schemes and crystal ball gazing that I have done. But from your own experience, how are you seeing the evolution of the small and growing businesses in Bangladesh and in other parts of the world that your experience set is? And particularly given all of this, the resilience of these businesses and what would be some of the factors which would help make these businesses more resilient to the challenges that I spoke about.
Thanks, Vikas, for filling me in on your areas of interest. Well, as far as the MSMEs in Bangladesh are concerned, I cannot really call them resilient. But yes, they're sort of, popping up in the landscape pretty much oftener than before. So it could be because of COVID. Because of COVID, many people just stayed back home and reinvented their identities and, and accommodated more roles. So somebody who was a teacher, a professor, I know at least one who started just a bakery, an online sort of, business. So many businesses have sprung up. I'm not sure about their sustainability. One, because there's lack of knowledge, financial knowledge. Two, there's lack of access to capital, which is absolutely key. Number three, I think it's also because it was a one-off thing. So it came up. But like you said, there's lots of techs, fintechs, health tech, everything, edutech, everything. And I sit in one of the boards, which basically just listens to a lot of startups pitching. Most of them are now fintech or health tech, nonstop. Also edutech. So there's also a saturation point that we are actually looking at. Because there's no more innovation. I mean, literally everyone's offering the same thing, just a different PowerPoint, just a different presentation. So it's becoming a little tiring. But at the same time, if I could just tell you, because I think there's a lot of software coming up, there isn't enough hardware. People just are dabbling with the virtual reality so much so that we're almost forgetting the real. But then again, simulation is also reality. So we don't know what to prioritize at this point of time. In Bangladesh, every other home has a boutique. So every woman, every housewife, every homemaker, wants to engage in a boutique business. Question is, where is the knowledge? Where is the R&D? Where's the design sense? And what they're doing is everyone's entrepreneurial, but it's not guided entrepreneurship. So there's aspiration, but there's no guidance or support. So if we could sort of link these small businesses to the large ones, especially with a couple of us who are actually exporting, then, we could see fruition. Apart from that, if they're just small businesses all across the country, I mean, at one point, they'll cease. I mean, I'm tired of looking at shops which are just closing down every other day. Everybody starts a store in a busy street, and every few months it changes the facade, and it's something else. It's good to be entrepreneurial. It's good to encourage, but also I think from the government, I think there should be MSME guidance. So, Bangladesh is heavily dependent on ready-made garments. 84% of our export earnings come from garments. But is that healthy? It's not. It's over-dependence. But where do we diversify? What's the next sector? I mean, if we could find an answer to that, and so far, we say that we need to diversify, but we actually haven't. So if we could sort of, look at maybe light engineering as the next best for Bangladesh, or, do more value addition in agriculture, then, or if we could encourage these MSMEs to add embellishment to the mass export that we do and contribute to value addition, then it would be interesting. So I think what needs to be done, Vikas, in Bangladesh is more tighter linkages between the MSMEs and the large enterprises. And, Bangladesh government should be mediating or that conversation. It needs a mediator. So, so that's something which is missing. Apart from that, Bangladesh government during COVID was extremely supportive, and Honorable Prime Minister made sure that the SMEs got enough stimulus. But you know what? The stimulus was announced. But when it came to the SMEs to draw from that stimulus, they failed because there were so many bureaucratic hurdles that they couldn't literally address. So at one point, the government said that providing funds or providing stimulus for the SMEs would be priority for Bangladesh. And then automatically all banks again focused on that, and that became easier. So what Bangladesh also needs to do is have more focus, especially for women, more focus target on access to capital. That is needed. For example, Bangladesh government says that at least 10% of the credit should be given to the women. And in reality, it's only 2 to 3%. So if we could have a central credit portal in Bangladesh, whereby every bank, whether it's for a man or a woman, and if all the SMEs and MSMEs could register, and if they could be tracked, and if every bank could have access to that, automatically, needs would be assessed and proper assessment could have been done. So maybe a central credit portal, maybe an active dialogue and mediation by the government between the really small SMEs and the large ones. These could help, but that's just random thought.
No, I think, Ravana, you make a couple of very, very important points. The first and foremost being the linkages between the small and growing businesses with the large corporates. So I can just share with you and the audience as well, something that we've been doing in India for the textile sector, as it happens out to be. We launched a program called Circular Apparel Innovation Factory, CAIF, about 4 years ago. With the help of Doon Foundation and Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail. And the whole objective was to promote circularity within the textile sector, given the way it was positioned on the set of industries which were contributing to environmental issues. And also very specifically, Ravana, because it employs a very, very significant proportion of women. And we've been working a lot as Intellicap in increasing women economic participation. So the whole idea behind this platform was to make a marriage between the large corporates and the innovators who are helping in providing solutions to the textile sector, which will make them release or use, reduce the consumption of water, reduce the release of effluents into the water, the amount of GHG gases that are getting released by the sector will come down, the energy consumption will come down. And over the last few years, we've seen this program play itself out with the help of some of the leading textiles manufacturers in India, where we at least have got the confidence that people, profits, and planet can all go hand in hand and all together. We've been able to create solutions with the help of the innovators that we've been able to identify, be it textiles to textiles recycling, be it alternative to single-use plastic, be it companies which will make the textiles industry much more energy efficient. All of us know the textiles energy bills are very high proportion of their cost of goods sold. Some companies are in the 10 to 15% range as well. So if you can become much more efficient in terms of energy usage, it goes straight down to your bottom line as well. So we found that this initiative of getting large corporates to come together with impact enterprises, small and growing businesses, works extremely well. From a small and growing business standpoint, they do not understand the language of the large corporate. They do not understand the necessity to put everything in a P&L and show the payback period, return on investment. And similarly, from the textiles industry standpoint, a lot of the problems that are being attempted to be solved is not core to their business. Core to their business is, let's get the design right and let's produce it mass scale in as low cost as possible, right? If water going to be used less, well, okay, great. If energy is going to be used less, yeah, it makes a lot of dent to my bottom line. Can I get an alternate dye, an organic dye, which will create environmentally less pollution? Yeah, sure, but as long as my final cost of production doesn't change. But as I said, the next decade is the decade that we need to watch out for and really take this entire experiment forward with the entire textiles industry. And hopefully we can take this across different markets, maybe bring this to Bangladesh and other textiles manufacturers, and also pick up learnings that industry in Bangladesh may have learned. So this is just one point that I wanted to pick up from what you said. And the other was really this whole catharsis of resilience. And a lot of SGBs getting shut, opening, getting shut down. And I was just reflecting on the word resilience, and it struck me that it's comprised of two very interesting words, adversity and opportunity. And it's really a mindset issue. So as businesses, as small and growing businesses, there are 4 levels that one really needs to think about when we are looking at the business. Number 1, at the individual level as a promoter. The second level is at the firm level, the organization level. The third is the entire supply chain around you. And the fourth is the much wider ecosystem, and Rubana mentioned about it, the regulators, the financiers, and how they are looking at the sector. And each of these 4 need to become harmonized in order for the small and growing businesses to succeed. And I'll just give you a small example post or in the COVID scenario, right? You talked about bakeries, right? Then lots of restaurants, and they were faced with either shut down or completely shift their business model to say, we will move away from providing a dining experience in our outlet to servicing consumers at home. Right? So this required the promoters, the proprietors to rethink their business model and have it in them that whatever the environment throws at them, they'll come up with a solution which will make the business flourish. Once you've convinced yourself as an entrepreneur, the next stage is to get the organization around you galvanized towards that thinking. To understand that our cheese has moved and that we need to be in a different business model. Third step is not just communicate and convince your organization, but the supply chain itself. As a delivery business, you do not have any geographical boundaries. You're not servicing a particular locality. A whole of a city is a potential solution. So your supply chain, which was geared towards servicing a particular outlet, will now have to service a much wider geographical area. So do you need to go in for a distributed model, or you want to go in for a centralized model? those are challenges that people had to solve for. And last but not the least, thank God for the fintechs and the payment solutions that they provided, right? Otherwise, everything is cash on delivery, and that business model itself has its own challenges. So there were enough people who were saying, no, let's get on to the digital mode of payments. So just to summarize again, I think, Rubana, what you spoke about, the need for tying up with large businesses is absolutely critical. Resilience, building resilience in these businesses is absolutely critical. A question for you is, what do you see as the role of the ecosystem builders in Bangladesh and otherwise in helping these small and growing businesses flourish, in crafting these partnerships with the large corporates, in convincing the regulators to think beyond the obvious, in convincing the banks that if you want to lend more to women, at least make sure that you are employing 30–40% women in your front offices, right? And that's not the case, for instance, in India, where the proportion of women employees in a bank is very limited. So Rumana, just throw some light on this entire issue of what you expect the ecosystem providers to do. And also, it'd be very interesting to understand from you the whole space of women entrepreneurs and the challenges that they face, and what are you thinking of in terms of how their problems can be solved?
Okay. Vikas, first of all, I mean, a great job in tying the small and the large into a discourse of compliance and sustainability. I don't know how you incentivize that, but usually, you know, the big and the small don't talk to each other. That's one. Bangladesh, for example, has at least 150 LEED certified buildings, with almost over 50 platinum certified, and the rest, of course, gold and silver. Now, the 500 factories are basically in the pipeline of certification. So we're great on green. And there was a proactive decision that Bangladeshi garment manufacturers took. But when it comes to talking to the small, it quite doesn't happen. But because I kind of feel, you know, the small also lack branding. I think it's important for the stories of the MSMEs and SMEs to be more visible, because there is a deeper story there. You know, COVID, because of COVID challenges, there are many entrepreneurs who have actually just concentrated much more on online. You know, consumer tastes have changed. Consumer pattern has changed. Like you said, you know, there's an abundance of, you know, mass customization. You know, things have changed. People just want more tailored goods, whichever product it is. So I sort of feel, you know, because this new set of group of entrepreneurs have cropped up because of COVID and because of the concept of work from anywhere, somehow we have fluid spaces that we can play with. The governments must be able to optimize that space. I mean, if government could have, for instance, Bangladesh does not have a very friendly online policy. You know, the online payment is so difficult. The gateways are so blurred. It's very difficult for anyone to basically opt for online businesses because it isn't friendly enough. So policymakers need to basically become more flexible. And instead of just talking nonstop about money laundering, you know, I think it helps for the lawmakers to also look at the opportunity of you know, much more revenue. So online policies need to be basically restructured. You know, Vietnam did a great job of diversification. So for Bangladesh, apart from garments, you know, there are at least 1,200 more businesses that we could do. And, you know, somebody in Jessore or somebody in Chittagong is doing some product which the big manufacturers don't know. So if, you know, if there is a platform called Bangladesh Investment Development Agency, BIDA, in Bangladesh, which basically looks after FDI and everything. If they could form a central diversification council, and under that, if MNCs from other countries, if Toyota, if Ford, if all of them sat on that board, and the big and the small could come together, then there would be knowledge sharing. And automatically, we would be able to go forward with diversification. So unless we have diversified into other sectors, we won't take off. Bangladesh government, however, emphasizes a lot on renewables. So for now, we have a sustainable, we have a, Bangladesh government has an entity called SREDA. It's Sustainable and Renewable Energy Development Agency. So what they do is they're tying up with private sector, and they are offering opportunities of, rooftop net metering. So automatically we are benefiting from that. Many other people could do that. So there are energy-friendly policies, but there are, as far as access to capital goes, I don't think we give that much priority to the small. So it's good to prioritize savings of big enterprises, but it's also good to encourage more small and medium to come forward, because small is the new beautiful of the century. And you talked about also the Ukraine war and said, the import imbalances that we have. So it's also time for us to concentrate on, inward-looking economies. We need to be self-sufficient. We need to produce and supply and buy and sell whatever we can to one another. Here, of course, I think Sucharita talked about bold collaboration. I think it's important for the entire region to come together and do, and if we really had a bold collaboration amongst all the South Asian nations, it would be so much more beautiful. Why is SAARC such a failure? Why is SAFTA still a utopia? Why is the interregional trade still under 5%? So these are questions we need to answer. Today through Andy, you and I are talking, but beyond Andy, are we talking? Is there a platform which actually actively encourages B2B conversations between the small and the big and the medium? Nah. So, nothing really changes. We could have webinars like this, one after the other, but unless there is a follow-up, unless we further connect and grow our networks, we won't be able to optimize our potential. I think I've spoken enough.
No, I think excellent point made on the issue of access to capital. I would certainly say that capital is the grease that makes everything move, but it's just one dimension. As you were talking about the need for sustainable business models, the need for not being me too, the need for innovation. So as we in Intellicap say, it's capital, knowledge, networks, and technology all need to come together. But on the access to capital bit, and we've been doing diverse initiatives across Africa, in South Asia, to understand the challenges for women specifically on accessing capital. And it starts with as basic a thing as an access to a mobile phone. In many, many countries, access to mobile phones are much lesser amongst women as compared to men. It boils down to the title to land, the electricity bill, the telephone bill, which are very, very important documents for people to establish your know your customer requirements. And those are things that women really do not have. So there is very little collateral that they can use to offer to get loans going to themselves. Their ability to do a dual role of giving care and at the same time running their own business becomes that much more demanding on their time. So there are no easy answers here, and society needs to change its own approach towards the role of women and the importance of developing care economies for women to actively participate in the economic development. In fact, one of the post-COVID studies that we did across the entire global South on about 300 odd enterprises, and how many of them had failed because of COVID, and we found a significantly higher proportion of women-owned businesses had actually shut down. A lot of women again got displaced because of the migration of people from their agriculture jobs, because the people who had migrated out had now moved back into their own societies. So women have had particularly faced a particular rough end of the stick, if I may say, over the last few years because of COVID and what's happened from their overall opportunity for economic development. How are you seeing that in Bangladesh? I guess you've also personally would have withstood a lot of societal odds to reach the position that you have. Any learnings that you can share with the audience as quick takeaways on what they should do differently going back to promote women entrepreneurship, women economic development would be very, very insightful.
I mean, seriously, because it all actually boils down to mindset. And I think it's a basic South Asian mindset that we have, where women actually don't matter. And, you know, there's been active slogans about hashtag he for she. And I also say it should be hashtag she for she. I think a woman needs to support another woman. I think that's important. I think a huge network of women one another would really help. And mindsets are mindsets. I mean, I can only share a personal experience with you. I sat on a board with 34 men, and I was the only woman. And I was the president of the Garment Manufacturers Exporters Association. And it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. I mean, instead of enjoying that position, I literally, after 2 years of serving that position, I was happy to have left. I literally handed over 2 weeks before my term to my successor and said goodbye, and took a break and straight went to my grandchildren and spent 3 months with them. So I think it's, you know, society can bog women down. Society can dampen our spirits, but being mothers and being the ideal partners that we are, and being grandmothers and being a business person, for me, I mean, what works is courage. I always bounce back. So I think it's important to have courage and faith in yourself, and that's how we win our battles. And it's literally, you know, everyday hiccups. But for most of my female colleagues, I say that, you know, pick your battles and don't fight, but strategize. I think that's important. I think women need to be more strategic. Women need to come together and support one another. And of course, you guys need to support us more. And you guys also need to admit that we are better than you.
Without any doubt. You take a spot poll on who's the better panelist, and I'm sure you, Rubana, you will win hands down.
That's an overstatement, but I think it's important for the discourse around women to change. I think it's important that we stand our ground and that we speak for one another. I think only then things are going to change. Otherwise, it's still going to be the same old cliched discussion on glass ceilings, which we will never break.
Those are very wise words, Rubana. Thank you. Sucharita is on. She's been getting very, very nervous that we will overshoot time. So Sucharita, over to you.
Thank you so much, Vikas and Rubana. I hate to be the bad one here, interrupting this awesome conversation. There are a few questions. We will make sure we get back to you on those questions there. But I think we just take one, because Anita's question you've partially answered. So the question says, what do you think are ways in which these countries can learn from each other? India is further along in its entrepreneur journey. and can help catalyze this for neighboring countries? That's a question, right? So I would say maybe sort of closing thoughts from the both of you on that question before we wrap up.
Right. If I get the name right, it's Anita who's asking this question.
No, we don't have a name. We'll respond to Anita later on in the interest of time.
Right. No, I think, as I said, building South-South digital bridges is extremely critical. Having a platform where people can communicate, see what is happening, have a conversation with them is extremely critical. I'll give you an example. Intellicap was working with JICA to create a small database of impact entrepreneurs across 5 or 6 sectors, such that the Japanese investors could take a look at them. This is just one step towards a long journey, which is of having a continuous engagement and dialogue and learning with each other. And that starts with awareness. So the first step that I think all countries in the global South need to do is to recognize that they need to be building bridges for their small and growing businesses, for giving them an opportunity to engage with other markets and in some way learn from them, as well as export to them or import from them, whatever their business models might be. In fact, we've done some work in Africa in creating a youth entrepreneurship platform for many countries across Africa. So it's initiatives of this nature which bring the entrepreneurs together. And trust me, if the entrepreneurs are together once, they will find a way of making the engagement happen. So what we need to do as ecosystem builders is to catalyze the market, bring the entrepreneurs together, let them engage in a free-flowing exchange of ideas. At a later date, we can bring the entire ecosystem of regulators, corporates, philanthropic foundations, investors, all of that. But as a first step, just get entrepreneur to entrepreneur exchange going across different areas. There are, as Rubana was saying, Bangladesh is extremely focused on RMG. There must be other countries who are focused on a lot of other initiatives. Let there be a free flow exchange of ideas amongst entrepreneurs, and then take it forward is the one basic thing that I would say is absolutely critical for the learning across the global South to happen. Over to you, Rubana, for your thoughts.
No, I just echo your thoughts, Vikas. It's just that I think intra-regional collaboration would help. So maybe we could pick a sector, supposing ready-made garment or whatever, and then if we could have more B2B conversations, like you said, between a large and a small, and then perhaps, there could be exchange of, you never know. I mean, if I need value addition, maybe I'll need embroidered cloth from India. So maybe a small enterprise from India could supply me that. And I could just do my special line with that. So I think it's important to have more conversations between business to business, business and businesses. And I think if we could stress on regionalism and South Asia, I think because of proximity, geographical proximity also will be able to gain quite a bit. So regionalism, regional collaboration for sure.
Thank you so much, Rubana and Vikas. And like I said, we will definitely try our best to make some of this collaboration happen. Thank you for making the time today, and look forward to working with you in the months and years ahead. Thank you, everyone. Please do join us on the next session. Yes, bye for now is what I will say, and we'll be in touch. Bye, everyone.